sorry, some issue was happened there. For that purpose, I couldn't record. So here I told that the amendment. So the amendment one day before the examination. If you read this is enough. So what is given here? Let's read it again. See, a registered person whose registration is cancelled and the proper officer on his own motion may, subject to the provisions of Rule 10b, submit an application for revocation. Correct? No, you can, a registered person to a proper officer, you can apply for the revocation here of registration in the prescribed form to such proper officer within a period of 90 days from the date of service of the order of cancellation of registration. So one is when you can apply for registration within 90 days from the order. Earlier it was 30 days, now it is 90 days. And the commissioner, joint commissioner, additional commissioner, as the case may be, they can give a further period of 180 days if you give the proper reason on the causes being shown and the reason to be recorded in writing. Now rule number 8.1 amended. There is a small amendment in rule number 8, sub rule 1. There is one small amendment that we are discussing now. So what is the amendment, sir? See, rule 8.1 has been amended to exclude a person supplying online money gaming from a place outside India to a person in India from declaring their PAN. Obviously, a person who is outside India, he has no PAN. With him, do you think he has PAN? No, he will not be having PAN with him. Outside India, he is from outside India, he has no PAN. In that case, why he is required to give the PAN? Not required. So online money gaming which is given from outside India to a person in India, this PAN is not required to be given. So this is clear. I hope this is clear. Yes. Next last amendment, which is a big amendment and very easy one. Many of my students had this doubt. So you had this doubt. So this amendment is going to clarify this doubt. So you tell me, in ISRO tank, ISROTANC, ISRO tank mein, what was S? ISS. What was S? What was S? Supplier under e-commerce. Correct? No? A supplier under e-commerce, that was S. Supplier under e-commerce, if you can recall that, a supplier under e-commerce has to take compulsory registration except whom, sir? Except service provider. Supplier under e-commerce has to take compulsory registration except service provider. Service provider is not required to go for compulsory registration. They have to go for compulsory registration only if their turnover exceeds 20 or 10 lakhs, as the case may be. If their turnover exceeds 20 or 10 lakhs, only then they have to go for compulsory registration. Otherwise, they are not required to go for compulsory registration. This was clear, no? But service provider mein, there was one more point. If you are a service provider, okay, if you are a service provider and your service is not notified under section 9 subsection 5, that service provider, we are talking about the service provider who are not giving specified services under section 9 subsection 5. People, ISRO tank mein S. From that S, please keep section number 9.5 wala S. Keep it aside. Section number 9.5 is different one that we already discussed. So if you want me to recall what is there in section number 9 subsection 5, some specified services which are given by the supplier through e-commerce to the recipient, then e-commerce is required to pay tax under RCM. Not RCM, I am so sorry, it is not RCM. E-commerce, they have to pay the tax. There were some specified cases that we have already discussed in doubt solved video. So you go to doubt solved video, then there is section number 9 subsection 5 ke bare mein we have discussed about that. Clarification. First video in clarification was this one. Okay, there to recall that HATR, 4 services are there. H and A, housekeeping and accommodation. So these 2 services, if it is given by service provider, if these 2 services are given by service provider who are registered, then service provider has to pay under FCM. They have to pay. If these 2 guys are not registered, housekeeping and accommodation service provider are not registered, then the e-commerce, they will pay to the government. on those services which are provided through e-commerce. Only on that they will pay to the government. So this is HA. T and R. In case of transportation and restaurant, no, in case of transportation and restaurant, it is always that e-commerce will pay to the government. But that too, in case of restaurant, no, you have to remember one point. What is that point? The restaurant services are given by those restaurant through specified premises. Then restaurant will pay under FCM. Restaurant will pay under FCM. If through specified premises, restaurant will pay under FCM. If not through specified premises, if they are registered or not, any services given by transportation and restaurant, no, these two services pay, ECO will pay to the government. So this is section number 9 subsection 5. Please keep it aside. We are not talking about that. That is already discussed. So that story is already done. Except that services. Now, supplier of goods or services through e-commerce. Firstly, earlier it was like in the beginning, section number 24 came, no, supplier through e-commerce on which TCS is done, no, always they have to take the registration, compulsory registration. Later they gave an exemption to the service provider. Service provider, if your turnover is less than or equal to 20 or 10 lakhs as the case may be, then you are not required to go for compulsory registration. No compulsory registration. But TCS will be done, no sir. But remember, TCS will also be not done on them. I think I forgot to tell this in the class. So those who are unregistered supplier of services through e-commerce, on that service provider, TCS will not be done. On that service provider, TCS will not be done. Listen to me carefully. Sir, kya bak rahe ho sir? Listen. There is e-commerce and there is service providers. These are which service providers, sir? Other than service provider under 9.5. Other than 9.5 wala service provider, if they are giving any services through e-commerce to one more guy, through e-commerce to this guy, then other than 9.5 wala, now the TCS will be done. Usually TCS had to be done. So to collect the TCS, this guy had to take compulsory registration. Later exemption is given. Hey supplier, hello supplier, if your turnover is less than or equal to 20 or 10 lakhs, then don't take the registration, not required, we will exempt you. Sir, but TCS will be done, no sir? No. On this service provider, TCS will not be done. Don't worry, TCS will not be done. But if service provider, if your turnover is more than 10 or 20 lakhs as the case may be, then you have to go for compulsory registration. TCS will also be done. You have to file your return, claim that TCS. If your supplier is not registered, then TCS will not be done. TCS will not be done. This was there earlier. See, initially all the service providers, all the suppliers through e-commerce, they have to go for compulsory registration because TCS will be done on them except 9.5. But later one exemption came for the service provider. If you are service provider, then there is one exemption. If your turnover is less than 10 or 20 lakhs, you don't have to take the registration. If your turnover is more than 10 or 20 lakhs, then you have to go for compulsory registration. This is second exemption. Now there is one new exemption, one new entry has come in the amendment that goods provider, supplier of goods through e-commerce, you are also exempt if your turnover is less than 20, 10 or 40 as the case may be. But there are some conditions. New exemption is that. New exemption, goods provider, you are also exempted from taking the compulsory registration if you are supplying goods through e-commerce. That is given here. First we will read what is given here. Okay? Okay, wait. See, as per section number 24, person who supply goods or services other than services notified under 9.5, that is separate story that we already know. Through such ECO, who is required to collect TCS under section 52 is required to obtain registration mandatorily. This was earlier. However, person making supplies of services through ECO other than 9.5 are exempted from obtaining registration with aggregate turnover up to 20 or 10 lakh. So that was already there, we have already discussed. No such exemption was no such exemption was available to a person supplying goods through such eco. Thus, as per the prevalent position, unregistered person were not permitted to make supply of goods through an eco. Unregistered person, unregistered goods supplier, unregistered person who were not permitted to make supply goods through eco. This was earlier. However, other suppliers supplying goods offline were allowed for exemption from registration. If you are going offline, you do whatever you want, exempt from registration. Consequently, it was decided to provide exemption up to threshold limit to the supplier supplying goods online through e-commerce, provided they are making only intrastate supplies. Why only intrastate supplies, sir? Why only intrastate supply? If they are going for interstate supply, anyhow ISRO tank mein I interstate supplier of goods, compulsory registration. Since interstate supplier goods has to otherwise obtain compulsory registration, no? Thus, the GST Council in its 47th meeting had in principle approved the scheme of allowing unregistered person to make supply of goods through ECOs. They would be required to declare their PAN and principal place of business so that it can be verified from PAN that the turnover is less than the threshold limit. See, you are not required to go for compulsory registration. Earlier you were. Good supplier, they were required to go for compulsory registration. Now they are not required to go for compulsory registration. Compulsory registration is not required, but there is one issue here. What is the issue? You have to go and enroll in GST. GST में आपको enroll करना होगा. So how to do that? Listen here. See GST. I'll go for login. Not login. Services पे. Can you see that services? In services, there is something called as user services here. User services में generate user ID for unregistered applicant. Click on this. You will go to one place. Click on yes. And are you applying to enroll as supplier through e-commerce operators? Yes. Click on this and give proceed. Now you can see that what are the things given here. Name as per PAN, your name, your permanent account number, email address, primary mobile number, and you have to fill that from where you are giving and what is the PIN code, all these things, goods, which services, SAC code, everything, put the CAPTCHA and give proceed. Once you give this proceed, no, you will be redirected to some other places and all the formalities you have to do, you will get one enrollment number. You will get one enrollment number, very important one. You have to get the enrollment number. It's not registration, proper registration nahi hai ye. So this is one enrollment number. So far, sir, what did we discuss? Just the flow. Under section 24, supplier through e-commerce, you are required to take the registration mandatory. First point is registration was mandatory. Later, one exemption came to the service provider. If your turnover is less than 20 or 10 lakhs, you are not required to take the registration. Compulsory registration is not required. If your turnover is more than 20 or 10 lakhs, then you have to go for registration. That was second exemption that we have discussed in the classroom itself. Now, the third amendment or the exemption which came now for this year 1/10/2023. From that day, one notification number 34 has come which says that the supplier of goods also, you will get the exemption provided your turnover should be less than or equal to 20, 10 or 40 as the case may be. You are not required to go for registration even if you do the supply through e-commerce. Goods suppliers through e-commerce 20, 10 or 40. If your turnover is less than so and so, you are not required to go for compulsory registration, but you have to go for enrollment. That is given here. Exemption is there, not required to take the registration, but enrollment is required. Accordingly, with effect from 1/10/2023, notification number 34/2023, CET dated 31st/7/2023 provided that the person making supplies of goods through an eco who is required to collect TCS under 52 and having an aggregate turnover in the preceding financial year and in the current financial year not exceeding the threshold limit in accordance with 22(1), what is that, 20, 10 or 40 lakhs, are exempted from obtaining the registration subject to the following conditions. What are the following conditions? Important one. Number one, which says that you should not be making any interstate supply. Remember, you should not be making any interstate supply. Second one, not make a supply of goods through eco in more than one state. Only in one state you should be making supply through e-commerce, and you should have got PAN. Otherwise, what you fill here? Here you have to fill that, no? You have to fill that for that purpose. Next one, such person shall, before making any supply of goods through eco, declare on the common portal their PAN, address, their place of business, state or UT from such in which such person seek to make the such supply, which shall be subject to the validation on the common portal. Finally, they will validate and granted an enrollment number. Lastly, on validation, they will grant you an enrollment number. Such person shall not be granted more than one enrollment number in a state. In one state, only one enrollment number, not more than that. No supply of goods shall be made by such person through eco unless he receives one enrollment number. Unless you receive the enrollment number, you are not required to, you are not supposed to go for the supply through eco. Where such person are subsequently granted registration under section 25, normal registration under section 25, now this enrollment automatically lapsed. Under section 25, that should be regular. Why it should be regular? Why it should be regular? Can it be composition? No, it cannot be composition. Why? NICE MC. NICE, NISE, E for e-commerce operator. If you are supplying through e-commerce, composition not possible. You have to go for normal. ये तो चक्रव्यूह है सर. हाँ, you should be remembering, you should remember all the sections. Now you can easily connect and you can draw a very beautiful picture. So finally, one conclusion about last amendment is that in case, so earlier, see, we will go from the beginning. 2017 में section number 24 says that if your supplier under e-commerce gone, you have to take compulsory registration except 9(5) wala services. Then if you are supplier under e-commerce where TCS has to be done, compulsory registration was there. Later, service provider started crying, sir, our turnover is less than so and so, sir, why we have to take compulsory registration? Government said, okay, tatastu. In your case, if your turnover is less than so and so, you are not required to take the compulsory registration. If your turnover is greater than so and so, what is this so and so? 20 or 10? Don't write 40. Service provider 40 not available. If your turnover is service provider, if you are service provider and your turnover is greater than 20 or 10 lakhs, then you have to go for compulsory registration. This was there earlier, we have discussed in the classroom itself. Now one more new entry has come, which is giving exemption from registration to the goods supplier also. If you are supplying goods through e-commerce, then if you are a big supplier, your turnover is more than 10, 20 or 40 lakhs. In that case, you can go for, you have to go for compulsory registration. If your turnover is less than that, then compulsory registration is not there, you will get one exemption. But exemption is based on the conditions. What are the conditions? You should not make interstate supply. You should not be making supply through e-commerce in more than one state. You should not be making that. And the third one, it is very important one, you should be granted with one enrollment ID, enrollment number on the basis of PAN. That means you should have the PAN, and not more than one enrollment number is granted in one state. And no such supplies shall be made before getting that enrollment number. And last condition is that once you get your normal registration under section 25, regular registration under section 25, then this number will automatically get lapsed. So here everyone, this is about the amendments which were there in your value of supply and this the registration chapter. So we will meet again with one more amendment lecture, one more amendment episode in the next video. ठीक है? Thank you so much everyone. Please keep studying, keep growing. Love you all. If you have some doubts, if you have some issues, please put it in the comment box so that I can reply to you, and your other friends, fellows, they also get the clarification to this. Thank you for your patient listening. Thank you so much. Hail GST Park. Bye.